And then like I tried to be disobedient because I didn't want to come back. Like that energy, that space was unlike anything I've ever felt, and I didn't want to come back. But the second that I tried to like jump towards it and like go through that, it snatched me like so quick. It was like, and then I was like back in my body. And
Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name's Betty, and today I'm joined by Khaliah Sage. And I'm super grateful for your willingness to come and serve our community at IANDS. Kalia is a near death experience survivor. She's an intuitive reader, a wellness coach, a psychic medium. And I got to hear you on another podcast. And I'm really excited to share space with you today. So I'm going to toss it right over to you. Thanks so much.
hey, thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really excited to share and just hope that my message goes to the people that need to hear it and healing. That's my whole goal. So I love it. Thank you for having me. Back in 2014, I developed a condition, Steven Johnson syndrome, which later developed to TENS, toxic epidermal necrolysis. I was taking a antidepressant medication prescribed, by a provider. And essentially, about 28 days into taking this medication, to prevent depression and suicidal ideations, all of my skin burned off, and I ended up in a coma for 37 days and experienced some really, really weird stuff. um, but that whole experience led me to like this giant spiritual awakening, and my life has never been the same since then. And I saw things that I could not explain at the time. This is 10 years later that I'm processing all of this, but it took me 10 years to process everything that I saw, everything that happened. But essentially, I was in that coma for, like I said, 37 days, and I had the outer body experience with that. So I was able to watch them do all these different things to me in the hospital. And it was very trippy because I was very religious when this happened. So I didn't have any concept of spirituality or anything mystical. So I thought I was dead. I thought I was dead and I was watching me die, is what I thought. But then I was quickly like met by this guide. It really wasn't like a person per se, it was just this kind of light being. And I wasn't scared of it, but I was asking questions. Like I was still my human self, even though I was in spirit body. So I was asking a lot of questions, but it was like reassuring me that, it was here to go with me and on this journey. And I wasn't dead. I kept asking that question over and over, like, am I dead? Am I dead? And they're like, no, you're not dead. And I'm like, am I gonna die? And they're like, no. So it wasn't even like language that I was really using to communicate with them. It was a lot of like telepathic and just inherent knowing, because they weren't really speaking words. It was more like vibrations. So I saw lots of different things. I was able to see what was presently happening, and then I was able to kind of go to different realms. I was able to go to the past part of my life and see, things that had happened that I didn't necessarily remember. I was able to go to the future and see things that were coming and things that are still coming. But then there was also this, hard to explain, but it's like I was able to see certain gifts and certain things that existed. But I didn't know what it was. Like they were just taking me through all of these different places, and there was beings, but I wasn't necessarily like focused on the beings. It was more like, hey, you need to know that this exists and you need to know that this is real. So they were just sort of taking me through all these different places. But where I spent like the most time was like Earth realm, of like seeing that we as people have abilities that like most people don't think they're real or whatever. So I was able to see that. And then in my past place, I was able to like see all the trauma that I had been through, and they were very clear that like I had to deal with that. I had to see that. I had to address that. in order to get through this journey. And like, I didn't want to, I was trying to run, like, there was just all these things, but they were making it very clear that healing trauma was like extremely important, if not the most important thing of this journey. And it was the hardest thing that I had to like sit and watch all these things that had happened to me as a small child. And I didn't remember them. So that was hard for me, but I had to watch it through. I was there, but there was a friend of mine that was my friend in real life, and I was watching this happen to her because it's like I couldn't see it happen to me, so I had to see it happen to somebody else. And I was able to, I was very upset and I was trying to protect her and all those things and all of that. And then there was like a lot of weird little like stuff that didn't make sense. It just seemed like dreamland is what I was calling it. But in actuality, it was things that I would later see in the future to come to fruition. So one of those things was like a bus fire. And I ended up seeing that 4 years later. Then that friend that I was speaking of, I met her mom in this realm, which in real life, I had never actually met her mom. So I didn't know what she looked like. I didn't have a picture of her, nothing, but I was able to identify her in my dream in 2014. And then when I met her in real life 4 years later, like she looked exactly like that. And she was in the same energy. Like it was very weird. And at the time, it was just like, hey, look at this. And so when I woke up, I didn't know what that meant. But 4 years later, I'm meeting her and I'm like, oh my God, they were trying to tell me that like we can see the future. Like, so when you see something and it stands out to you and you remember it, that's a sign that, you're seeing something that's either to come or some kind of deja vu or a premonition or something like that. So I was able in that moment 4 years later to remember that and connect it that, hey, we do have these abilities. And I did do that. And that is weird. Um, and then I guess the weirdest part of all of it was so towards the end of the coma dream, I don't know how many days it was because time doesn't exist in that realm. Time only exists on this 3D realm. But I was very I was over all of it. I didn't want to do any more of these little tests or journeys. I was like, I'm over this. I want to talk to God, like right now. Like, take me now. I don't want to talk to y'all anymore. Like, I don't want to see any more stuff. Take me to God. Like, where is the manager type energy? Like, I want to speak to the manager. So next thing I know, I was just sort of like whisked because like there's no like walking or like it was just like you think you're there and then you're there. So it was just like stream of consciousness, boom, I was there. And so then I'm greeted with like this giant stairs, like wide, big, pearly, like shiny, glistening. And so I'm just sort of floating up and they're telling me like I can get close to them, but I can't get too close because if I get too close, I won't be able to come back. And so I'm just like, okay. And so then I'm in this space and I see this just like giant, elaborate mirror that is just like the most, I'm getting chills even talking about it, but it's like just extravagant, like jewels and crystals and just light and just warmth is coming from this mirror. And in it, I can see everything. And like, there is no, like, I'm standing in a room, but there's no walls in this room, but this mirror is taking up like an exuberant amount of space. And it's just, I can't even talk when I'm standing with it. I am just overcome by emotion. Like, there's this love I can't even describe that I've never actually felt on this earth, but I'm feeling that and I'm again able to communicate with it and everything is there. Like everything, light, dark, everything is there. And I'm able to see like anything that I bring to my consciousness in an instant, like just boom, things, even things that I don't know, like I didn't know at the time, like I wouldn't know to think that it was still able to like come through. And I'm just it's answering all of my questions because I have so many questions. And my main question is just like, where were you? Where were you when all this stuff was happening to me? And like, full disclosure, I was kind of mad that it wasn't like, white man with a beard sitting up there. Like, I was bummed because I was fully expecting like, a person, but it wasn't a person, it was a mirror. And it was like, I could see myself, but then if I looked through it, I could see anything. So it took me back to the place where I had just watched, in the past where I had been abused, and it's showing me where that energy was in that moment. And so while it didn't like completely satisfy like my humanness, like my spirit knew that I was being protected and that there was this element of separation, like my consciousness was sort of being held outside of my body so that I wouldn't absorb like all of the pain that my body was experiencing. And so it was it was like comforting, but then the human part of me was still like, but why did you, let it happen? Like, why didn't you just stop it? And then in that instant, I'm able to see like where this light is trying to, overtake this darkness that was around me. And I can see that it's both like there, like there's this battle going on. And it was just like mind blowing. And I couldn't even make words for how I was feeling to see that, but I just kept like crying. And then like I tried to be disobedient because I didn't want to come back. Like that energy, that space was unlike anything I've ever felt, and I didn't want to come back. But the second that I tried to like jump towards it and like go through that, it snatched me like so quick. It was like, and then I was like back in my body, and I was hearing like all the beeps and the hospital noises and like all the things, and I just realized like I was back in this realm because I felt so heavy. Like the heaviness that I felt being back in my body was nothing like what was over there. There, I was like free form. Like it was almost like this mistiness. Like, I don't know. It's like I could just float. I don't know how else to describe it, but I was able to just do whatever. There was no pain. There was no I mean, I had human emotions, but I wasn't experiencing like the human emotion like I experienced it in my body. It was this knowing and experiencing at the same time. And I knew why I was experiencing, and there was no resistance when I was in my spirit body. But there was a lot of things when I woke up that I was talking about all these things, and the people around me were like, "What are you talking about? You've been in this, coma for 5 weeks. Like, what are you talking about?" And one of the things that I was able to do was go and visit a friend who was having a gender reveal party while I was in the coma, and that was important to me. She was a friend, a really close friend at the time, and I was sad that I was missing that because I had just found out she was pregnant like right before I got sick, and so it stood out to me because she was thinking about me a lot. She told me that when she came to visit me, she was like, I was thinking about you so much. And when she said this to me, I was able to kind of connect that our thoughts are the energy that I was seeing. So because she was thinking about me, I could go there easily, basically. And so when I'm popping in, I was able to see everything that happened at that party to the point that I thought I was there. So when she came to tell me, like, hey, here's what the baby is since you missed the party. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was at the party. Like, huh? I was there. I'm describing like things that I saw, things that she did, people that were there, and she's just like, because I wasn't wrong, but she knew I obviously wasn't there, and so I'm just like, what are you talking about? It's a boy. Like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, just open the gift. And I'm like, I genuinely believed that I was there. So I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, so then I started naming all these things that happened, and she's just like, so once that started happening, like I knew that what I had experienced was not just a dream. It wasn't just like drugs that I was on or whatever. Like it was real. And then the next thing that happened after that, that kind of confirmed, the things that I was experiencing was I started having seizures. And the doctors claimed that it was because they woke me up from the medically induced coma too soon. And I started, seizing because of that. But intrinsically, I understood that that was my body or my spirit trying to get back into my body. And that process, can cause some electrical, currents or whatever that verbiage is, but just electrical impulses that don't, go where they're supposed to. Because I ended up having another seizure. It continued to happen for like a week or two after I woke up from the coma. And so I ended up having one where, again, I jumped out of my body and I was standing next to the bed watching them do all of this stuff to me. So it was the same thing that had happened before. And so in that moment, I see the nurses run in and I see the doctor standing there, and she has this like pin looking thing and she's like smashing my toe, and my spirit body is yelling at her like, what? That my toe, my toenail on it. Like I'm losing it because like I'm very passionate about things being right. and handled properly. So I'm like in spirit form, I'm seeing all this and I'm yelling at her. And so then, okay, boop, pop back into my body. I'm telling her, why did you smash my toe with that pin? And she's looking at me like, you were unconscious. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I was standing there watching next to you. Like I could see you guys. I said, that nurse got the little sucky thing to aspirate the applesauce my mom had just put in my mouth. And that one, gave me the Ativan. Like I was naming what everybody did, even though everybody in that room saw that my body was unconscious. They're all looking at me like, but I'm not wrong because I just named what all of you did. And they're all like, and so the doctor was like, you couldn't know that. And I'm like, obviously I do. And I'm trying to tell her, like, excuse me, I'm like trying to tell her, I saw what you did. I was standing right there. And she's like, she didn't want to argue with me, but she's like, no, you were having a seizure. And I'm just like, okay. So then I'm like, I'm done with this. Like, they're going to put me in the psych ward if I keep talking about this. And so in actuality, they tried to put me on a psych hold, but after about, I don't know, a few hours, they had the psychiatrist come and talk to me, and I told her everything that happened. And I said, I don't want to take any medicine because this all happened because of a medicine. And they, in that moment, took me off of the psych hold because there was nothing psychologically going on with me. There was no hallucinations. There was nothing, except I knew what I saw was true and they knew that what I saw was true. And there was no refuting that I had that experience. But doctors don't acknowledge, out of body experiences. They think that's, not real. So it was a long period of questioning, my own sanity, if this is real, and what if it was just the drugs? And I asked myself all of those questions, but then when those things that I saw started popping up in my reality, like I couldn't deny it anymore. And what I also could not deny was how different I was after that experience. And of course, if someone has a traumatic experience, they're changed. But what was very strange was that I had this peace and this unexplainable just peace. And keep in mind, like I went into the situation. Oh, excuse me. I went into this. Oh, can't even talk. Excuse me. I went into the situation suicidal, almost died trying to not be suicidal. And then suddenly I just wasn't suffering from that depression, from that heaviness, from that darkness. Like that first year, I didn't have any of the, mental health issues that I had previously had. And that didn't really make sense to me at the time. Me and everybody around me was fully expecting me to be depressed again, to be suicidal. But there was just this peace, like this warmth, this energy around me and coming in me, through me, that I was just fine. Like I was fine that first year, to the point that I only knew that something was wrong with me, when somebody else told me. And I lost all of my skin. I lost my hair. I lost my fingernails. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to, several corrective surgeries afterwards. And every time I had a surgery, there was something, spiritual and weird that happened. But what doctors could not explain was that I had this ability afterwards. My body had an ability to heal itself in a way that nobody was expecting. Losing, upwards of 90% of my skin, they were expecting me to need skin grafts and, pig skin and all this kind of stuff. But my skin grew back at a rate that astonished even them. And then my vision was impacted, but it still is healing in a way that I shouldn't be able to do that. So now I have something called limbal stem cell deficiency as a result of the burn. And with that, you're supposed to lose all your stem cells, and then you can't heal your corneas anymore. And then, you eventually go blind. And so they were telling me that I was going to go blind, within a few years. And they were telling me at one point I might possibly lose my eyes, and there was all this stuff. And so there was this huge need for this stem cell transplant, but my spirit was like, no. And I was having such a hard time, like, balancing this because, my physical body was blind. I needed a surgery so I could see, but my spirit is telling me, no, that's not for you. It's not going to work. Like, no. And so long story short, I ended up, not having the stem cell transplant. And because of that, I went to my doctor saying, hey, I'm not gonna be able to get this stem cell transplant. They were able to do a different test and see, oh yeah, you have like major cataracts. So we got to remove those. But it was such a risky surgery because they couldn't see through the front part of my eye. And it was just like a whole thing. So they're fully expecting and preparing me to have a really, really long recovery because with limbal stem cell deficiency, you don't heal properly. So they're fully telling me it's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks for my eye to heal after surgery. They're doing all this extra stuff, giving me so much anxiety. Then I had surgery in March of 2021, ended up having another out of body experience during that surgery, and came back in, and my eye had healed. Like, I went from 2012 50 plus off the charts to 2040, which they had told me that wasn't possible, that I would only get to maybe 2500 or something, which is still very much legally blind. So they were not expecting for me to make that big of a leap at all. And so then the next day when I went, for my post-op appointment, she told me your incisions are healed. And I was like, huh? And she's like, yeah, your incisions are closed. And I'm like, is that supposed to happen? And she was like, yeah, but not like this. And I was like, wait, do I have symptoms or no? And she's like, yeah, you do, but we don't know, how you're able to do this. And it was just like, so it was like this moment of like excitement because, literally a miracle happened. Not only did I get my vision back in this way they weren't expecting, but my physical body healed in a way they were not expecting at all. And it just was astonishing on multiple levels. But everything that was impacted from the Steven Johnson, so my skin, my hair, my nails, my eyes, the inside of my body, everything now has some weird ability. So like my skin heals at a rapid rate, which again, it shouldn't, scarred tissue normally doesn't heal the same way, but my tattoos heal in like a couple days, like, and even just how I even am now, like I still have scars, but they were not expecting that at all. And now it's like I have abilities where I can touch things and they heal. I cause a lot of electrical interferences, so I experience that a lot, but there's definitely something different that I didn't have that prior to all of this. I had abilities prior to all of this. I was very intuitive, but I wasn't like that. So there was definitely something that happened. And years after that, I had a reader tell me that, there was something I got while I was in that coma that allowed me to heal and heal other people. And I was like, as soon as she said it, I was just like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And then when it actually happened, to me in surgery, and I broke all the doctors' faces because they were all just like, oh. So it was astonishing. And I was very much medical health background. So I'm all about facts and data, but this was something I knew science could not explain. The science that we currently have, it really couldn't explain what happened to me. And all these different doctors are saying the same thing, that I shouldn't be able to do this, I shouldn't be able to do that, and blah blah blah. But I'm just doing something totally different. And after the surgery, the eye surgery, it was like my gifts really exploded. So once I could physically see again, my gifts exploded even more. So my intuition went damn near reading people's minds, perfect strangers, not even intending to. That's where it's funny, because I had to learn that yes, we all have the ability to do this, but when you're operating from an ego space, it doesn't work. So like when you're operating in a love, high vibrational space, the information just flows to me. It just flows, and I just know, and I deliver it, and wherever it goes, that's where it goes. And the person knows what that's for. But anytime I like try to make it happen, it's like I get blocked, because that's where my ego is like, I want this. But ego and spirit are like separate. So it's been a learning thing, because that's where I had to learn that spirit uses me for the things that, I need to be used for. It's not just about, me, oh, I can heal people. Like, yes, but it's really about teaching people to heal themselves, right? So I went on this journey after this experience and understanding what that looks like and what does that mean. And the whole thing is about reconnecting body, mind, and spirit. It's operating on all three of those spaces at the same time. That's how we heal. Going back and healing your trauma, that's how you elevate. That's how you raise your vibration. Anytime you're stuck in that stagnant traumatic energy, you can't really progress as fast or as high as you would. It's like you have like blocks chained to your, ankles or something, and you can't elevate. So they took me through an extremely long healing process, but the whole thing taught me that number one, we all have these abilities. We all have psychic abilities. We all have healing abilities. You just have to unlock them. And how do you unlock them? Through healing your trauma, through doing inner child healing, through connecting body, mind, and spirit and operating from that space all the time and not just thinking about the body, not just thinking about the mind, and not completely ignoring the spirit, which is what our society has really, taught us to do. um, that was a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna take a break.
Thanks so much for sharing. I wrote down so many things. Your story is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So, the first thing that comes up for me is just to play kind of this dual advocate. Why do you think that some people have these experiences and some people don't?
Why do I feel like some people have these experiences and some people don't? Well, I can say that I had this experience because I was open enough to receive it, and I was open enough to do something with it on the way back, right? So when you have a near death experience, there is a message that you're meant to bring back. But if you aren't open to even receiving that or believing that, then that could be why. I also feel like there's soul things, right? So there's like soul contracts, there's things that we agree to do as souls. And that was definitely one of them. Even though I wanted to die, I couldn't because that's not what I was supposed to do, which is why they didn't let me. I had a hard time dealing with why didn't they just let me die? Because I wasn't supposed to, because I was supposed to bring this, healing energy back in this story back. So why doesn't that happen to other people? Maybe they're not at the vibration to even integrate such things. Because while I was very religious at the time, which religion and anything connected to that absolutely suppresses your vibration, I was open hearted. I was open enough to think that something like that could be possible. But I think it also has to do with some people aren't meant to evolve. And I know that's hard for, people to accept, but that's something that I was able to see. Not everybody is going to evolve. Some people are going to stay on that lower vibration. Nothing is nothing, everything is energy, right? And nothing is created or destroyed. So it doesn't go away, it just gets transferred. And some people are meant to go to that space where we're no longer operating in that vibration, but something has to contain that. It can't just be nothing, right? So in part, that's why, again, it's the I was open to have an experience like this. And I think there was something about my life in particular, my story in particular, because I had been through a lot of trauma and I can relate to a lot of different kinds of people. So I can only speak for myself. I think that's what, the reason was for me. But the main thing I think is openness. I think if you're open and your energy is open, you can have more spiritual experiences. You can receive more spiritual downloads. You can. But when you're blocked by fear and religion and shame and thinking that, this stuff is evil, you're not going to be able to receive it when that's the container that you're putting it in. So,
Thank
yeah.
you for that. That's really helpful. And I really love your explanation of that. Another thing that I had written down while we're talking about healing trauma, and you escaped this suicidal ideation
Mm-hmm.
by having this near death experience. You wanted to die, you did die, and now you're back, right? But
Yeah,
not everybody gets to have that super transformative experience to bounce them out of that state of mind. And so I hear you saying that healing trauma is so important, and I'm sure it's also important for getting over thoughts of suicide and really intense
absolutely.
depression. So can you
Yeah.
go into what some of your healing tools are to help somebody listening?
Yeah, so for me, I did a lot of therapy. That was the first thing I did, but I couldn't stop there because that's only working in the mind space. But I needed to get that mind space more stabilized so that I could be open to more spiritual stuff, right? So I did a lot of therapy, all different kinds, and I was committed to it. But then second to that, I in that started realizing, okay, this isn't just what I need. I need more than just mind help. I need to get reconnected to my body because I wasn't feeling anything after that first year, I kind of started getting depressed again. So I had to do something else. And I refused to take medicine again for obvious reasons. And I'm not discouraging anybody from doing what they need to do. But for me, I refused to take any more medication. So I went down a huge spiritual journey. I had to understand, I was seeking to understand what I had experienced. So it started with just looking into spiritual stuff and reading about a lot of divination and tools and stuff like that. But then once I started doing that, I was like, okay, I need to get back, I need to bring it into the body. So that's when I started doing a lot of somatic stuff, and really getting in tune with nature. I know it sounds so like hippy dippy and, everyone's like, eh, but our earth is like, it's connected to that source, right? So anytime we want to get connected to that, we can access it by going into the natural elements that it created. So I had to make nature therapy like a real committed thing. I also got into like sound healing. That did a lot for me in ways that I was not expecting. Because again, our society teaches us to take a pill or, just move on, keep yourself busy, distract yourself. But none of that was actually helping me heal. What actually helped me heal was acknowledging my pain, acknowledging my fear, and doing something to help myself feel better on all three levels. So it was that body work, it was the therapy, it was getting into spirituality and getting away from religion. Again, not to spend too much time. I'm not here to bash other people or other people's anything, but for me, I recognize that my religion was absolute oppression. It was absolute fear, coercion, and I learned about, emotional frequencies and how all of our feelings and emotions are on a different frequency. And the frequency of fear is one of the lowest vibrations that we could ever be on. And my religion was teaching me to fear and shame myself, to be scared of who I was. So I had to get away from that. And that was the hardest thing, but it was the most pivotal moment of my healing journey, to leave Christianity, to leave church, to leave all of that and truly seek who I am and who God is. And then, surprise, we're God. So it was accepting those things, right? It was not being fearful to look outside of what this thing that doesn't actually help anybody tells us. And that was huge for me. So that plus that trauma work, I had to stop re-injuring myself by going back to the thing that traumatized me. And for me, it was my family. So I had to get completely away. And for me, it was valid because there was lots of abuse, lots of generational trauma, lots of enabling, lots of narcissism. So I had to keep myself safe. And that was something that I had to learn to do because trauma teaches you to just tolerate, just forgive them and just don't worry about it. But that doesn't actually help you heal. So I had to do that. I had to get away from church and I had to do all of those things that I mentioned earlier consistently. So instead of, waiting until I was in pain to do something about something that hurt me 3 weeks ago, I would be very intentional about moving that energy in the moment. Because anytime you have an emotional experience or a spiritual, any kind of experience, that's all energy and all frequencies. And it gets stored in your body somewhere if you don't do something about it. So what I learned was to do something about it on body, mind, and spirit level immediately so that I wasn't storing that trauma. And then I could move through the process and not need to take medicine or not need to do anything else. And so that plus getting very into herbs and nutrition. So I had to see that our food was poison, particularly here in America. It's terrible. So I had to figure out what did my body actually need? What does my body need? And then that's how I, opened up this whole world of seeing the connection between our food as medicine, or at least it should be, and how we can actually heal ourselves with that. And so that was something I used in conjunction. But it was really everything. It was doing all of those things. But the biggest difference was that I was believing that those things would actually help me. When I tried to do, little herbs or whatever before, I was like, this is bullshit. And like I was attaching negativity to the thing. So that was inherently blocking me from having any kind of positive experience. But once I actually believed that this can help me, whether it was the sound therapy, the nature therapy, you know, working with animals, excuse me, whatever it was, I had to believe that it could actually help me and that I didn't need to do the thing that that person said I needed to do or whatever. I had to take what resonated for me. And that was a huge thing because everything doesn't work for everybody in the same time. So what someone else was telling me about, you know, getting into divination and using pendulums, but I wasn't ready to believe that that wasn't evil, right? So when I tried to do it, it didn't work the way that I needed it to get the clarity that I was seeking. But once I actually started working with clearing my chakras and aligning my energy and all of that, it worked like, you know, immediately. And so I really did see the connection between our belief is huge. And again, psychology knows this. This is why, you know, therapists have jobs still because we all created so many beliefs around this trauma, our experiences, our parents, you know, all these things. And that's why we need help now. So I used that same energy to heal though. And then another thing was highlighting the inner child healing. So I did so much when it came to inner child healing. I make that a part of my life, my day-to-day routine. I'm constantly living in that inner child space because what I figured out was just like with PTSD, you go back to that space, you can trigger your brain to do that for a healing thing, right? So when we were kids, we were more connected with the divine and we did have an imagination and we were open and all of that. So I figured out that's the way to connect with that energy easily. So I did a lot of inner child work, shadow work. I play, I color, you know, I do something every day for my inner child, but that connection was what fueled my spiritual gifts, you know, with more understanding, much like I had when I was a kid before all the, you know, trauma really made me forget who I was. So I know that was like 19,000 things, but it was a lot of all of that. And it was a 10-year journey. It's not quick. And that don't believe anybody that tells you you can heal quickly. You cannot heal the same way you were traumatized. So if your trauma was quick and impulsive and hard, you cannot heal that way. And I had to figure that out too. So for me, it meant slowing down. As simple as that sounds, slowing down helped my nervous system heal and know that I was safe and could do whatever I was trying to do. So not approaching it the same way that I got traumatized was key. Doing the inner child healing consistently was also a key. And then that body, mind, spirit, attacking everything on the 3 levels really did it in. That's what helped me not need medicine anymore.
That is so super helpful. Like, I am all about rationally explaining to people how healing can take place, and you just did an amazing job explaining that. So thank you so much. It really like bothers me when spiritual teachers are like, you just let go. You just
I can't stand
do
that.
it.
Even as a
I'm like, no, you don't just let go. Like,
no,
you got to do stuff,
you got to do
action. It's the
something. You got to
balance.
ask yourself, why can't you let go? And that's
Right.
what you need to be addressing because it's yes, you will inherently let go when it's time, but it's not an intellectual choice. It's not a cognitive choice to let go. Your energy will let go when you've processed it the way that it needs to be processed. And that's why like I will never be that toxic positive, oh, just be positive and just love yourself back to health. Like that's a part of it, but you have to deal with that darkness too. I was trying to live in the light, you know, prior to that experience, I was an extremely positive person. I would not talk about anything that happened to me, but that's what was keeping me stuck. So you have to go into the darkness. It's all about balancing the duality. Yes, our goal is to live in the light, but you got to deal with the darkness first, right? So that narrative of just let it go. Yeah, I tried to do that. And that's what led me to being in a 37-day coma and needing drugs. So, yeah.
Wow. Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I really enjoyed our time together. I want you to share about how people can get a hold of you and if there's any parting words that you'd like to share to feel more complete about this time today.
I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful to have survived this experience. And it took me a long time to be grateful, but I am truly. And I know that I can help people heal themselves. And I love this work that I get to do. So you can find me on TikTok, you can find me on Instagram, Linktree, and I do bookings, I do readings, I do coaching, I do all those things. So you can find me. I'm the Khaliah Sage on all platforms. So my parting message is know that you can heal yourselves. know that by doing the work, by healing your inner child, by reconnecting with yourself, by reconnecting with nature, you can heal yourself from just about anything. So,
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
thank you.